All right, friend, here we go. The Learn to Listen series. I'm so glad that you are part of this. So thanks for joining me in my house.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with this series, I've done some things with a lot of different artists, Christian artists that are working in the marketplace, some that are working in just Christian arenas, schools, colleges, universities. But we usually start this with background. So can you tell me just a little bit, share about your dance history and dance background?
Sure. Gosh, it goes way back. Started at a very young age, pursued ballet since I was 8, fell in love with it by the time I was about 13 and thought, this is what I want to do. I want to be a ballet dancer. So at that point, I transitioned to another studio where I could take class up to 6 days a week. I was in for it. Got out of high school a year early so I could pursue dancing. Got my first job when I was 19. Then just kind of a dark time in my life happened. I left dance. I decided to come back home and pursue, education. I always thought, oh, I'm never going to go to school. I'm going to be a professional dancer.
There you go.
Yeah, but that changed. And then I came back, believe it or not, taught aerobics in the 80s.
There we go. Did you have like the whole attire and the leg warmers?
I had the whole deal. I was, sporting the whole outfit.
Yeah.
Oh my. And at that point, I started dancing again when I was in Houston. This is all happening in Houston. And I started dancing in a jazz company for a while and thought I left the ballet world and thought, okay, I want to dance. I really miss it. And so I started working with a jazz company. At that point, I was starting to be introduced to more Christian artists.
Okay.
At that time, I didn't have a faith with the Lord, and there was quite a few people in my life that were very instrumental. And I met dancers. I came to know the Lord when I was in my 20s. And at that point, the Lord really just restored my dance in a really beautiful way. So at that point, I realized, okay, this is a talent that he's given me and that I want to use for his glory. And it took a while to transition through all that, but through a lot of friends and a lot of prayer through my family, my parents, praying me through all of it, really knew that, I wanted to stay in the dance world, even though I was pursuing college. And so, I continued dancing and started working with a professional company with Ad Deum and met Randall Flynn. And that's just a whole beautiful story in itself, how we met. And he was very instrumental in my walk, and then just started meeting more and more Christian artists that in secular environments as well. That was really awesome to know that God has these Christian artists planted everywhere. In the marketplace, in the Christian environment, they were everywhere. So it was really beautiful to see. And then through more interactions, I met you. I think that was in late 90s.
Yeah.
Was it the late 90s?
Yeah.
Like 98, 99, I don't know. And so when I first met you, just meeting so many beautiful Christian artists and leaders. It's just like pioneers. Bringing dance into the church, into the marketplace. It's just been a beautiful journey. And next thing I know, I was teaching at a professional ballet school. I was teaching at Houston Ballet, but I knew there was a transition coming up when I was a single mom with 2 children and needed some security. And then lo and behold, you entered into my life again. How God orchestrated all that. It's just so beautiful. And you were working in a university, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna see what happens. And you say, hey, submit your materials. Let's see. Next thing I know, I'm working in higher ed. And so, and it's been there ever since. And it's been a journey. It's been a beautiful walk.
So incredible.
Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to it, but that's in a nutshell.
That's so great. Well, I think probably you are the one out of just all these Christian friends that I've had that have been in the arts. We've done so much together. We've just done both in the university setting, but with our travels, and we can, talk about that in a little bit as well. But just the connection through these years and our kids growing up together. And having children that are similar age, and now that they're still really great buddies, and it just, God does beautiful things.
Absolutely.
That is beyond what we can ask or imagine. And we think that, we're in this career, but it's really so much. I mean, it's just this whole calling together. So yeah, it's a joy to have you sit right here. And
it's a pleasure.
It's been something I've wanted to do for quite a while. So we're in the season where school's out.
Yes, you can come up for air.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. So with your journey as a Christian and as a dancer, I love for you to share a little bit more about even the marketplace, because that's where you worked for quite a while, and what you were seeing in the marketplace as far as maybe even artistry or things that started to, tug your heart as a Christian or as an artist, just knowing that maybe there was a contentment or a discontentment. Just, I'd love that world perspective compared to your Christian worldview perspective.
Yeah, teaching at Houston Ballet for so many years, it was such a joy and a treat to be in that professional environment, but also to come in and bring, even though they didn't know they were getting it, they were getting this light of Christ, and to hear students go, there's something different about you. Or they'll say something like, you just don't let us get away with anything, but I do it in love and try to nurture them. But I see some of those same crossovers within Christian artists as well. Just that nurturing, because we know that particularly the ballet world can be pretty vicious and pretty hard. And for them to see their value and to see their worth is one thing that I try to say, I see you, I hear you. You're more than just your big développés and your big jumps. There's so much more to you, and to bring that and nurture that within the marketplace is a beautiful thing, particularly in the ballet world, because it can, like I said before, it can get kind of ugly and kind of vicious, and not every place.
Right.
And definitely I feel that with that Houston Ballet, that was fostered as well, because they really wanted to nurture not just the technician, but they wanted the mental aspect. They just never had the spiritual aspect of it. And so being able to come in and be that person, not blatantly, but they just knew, how the Holy Spirit would just allow opportunities for me to speak into their lives. And so that was always beautiful to be able to do. But again, just to nurture their value as a human being. And to continue to teach them like I do today, is to teach with the body that God has given them. And even though they, in that particular place, didn't recognize as God giving them that body, they just see an aesthetic and they want to reach it. And so that understanding that there's a purpose for their life outside of just dancing. And so it's been quite a journey doing that as well. Still love it.
That's so great. Well, I think a part of the core value is, here's who I am and here's what I do.
Right.
And so often we just put a lot of time or effort or energy or thought on the aspect of doing and really forgetting about the person. And so that's something that's beautiful, both about you, but also not just the value that you hold, but actually seeing it in your students and their stories coming back around later again to share. This is something that I've learned, and no matter if I graduate and I don't continue to dance, I still know I am a person of worth.
Right.
So it's so wonderful. Right. And in this series, we also have opportunity to hear about just learning to listen. And I know that along your journey, admittedly, you weren't a Christian in your early years as a dancer. How do you feel like God has cultivated in you that discipline to hear his voice, and what ways do you hear God? Because I know in your creative endeavors, there's amazing creativity that comes out of you. And I know that there is inspiration that fuels that. But how do you hear the voice of God, or how does God demonstrate creativity or speak to you?
Right.
With you?
Gosh. There's so many times where I have to still myself to hear that, because again, as a single parent, it's easy to stay in that busyness of life and to do things on my own, because I know I can, but it doesn't always mean it's the best way to do it. To take time, to just to be still and to listen and to know and have him make the choices for me. as opposed to me making the choices, because it's so easy for me to step out on my own and do it. Yeah, but just hearing him, reading his word, that just speaks so loudly, and seeking counsel when necessary, if I need that counsel to know which direction to go. But yeah, just trying to stay in tune with his heart, and to know that it's not about me that's ultimately revealed or shown or exalted at all. It's all about him being seen, and what's best with whomever I'm in contact with. What am I working with? Listening to my students, seeing my students, you can see that so much just by walking into a ballet studio and just where they're at. The Holy Spirit gives you that kind of intuition, especially being a mom. Double. And so you can just tell that, the air is a little heavy today, or what can I say? Give me the words to speak, to build, to breathe life, freshness into these bodies that are tired or weary or whatever they're going through. So just continuing just to quiet myself before him. And that's really hard to do, especially when we're so busy. Unnecessarily busy sometimes. Maybe that's just me, but unnecessarily busy.
No, I think all of us have that, succumb to the value in what we contribute is connected to how much time am I spending, how much activity am I engaged in, and so that place of quietness. And talking soon here about just choreography or creativity, I really believe there's that beautiful connection between being still on stage and having those moments. And I just, I love you as a person and as a longtime friend and as a sister in Christ. But I love your creativity and love the artistry that comes through you. And you know how to do that. There are moments that you can capture on the stage in your craftedness, craftwomanship, that I think even just gives us that essence of that quietness with God. But could you share some about your creative process and how you go about crafting dances? And
that's, I know an MFA graduate asked me, Marlita Hill asked me, how do you do that? And I was like, I don't know. I just think the design of it, I said, I don't know. It's got to be God. I mean, with ballet, there's such a formula to how you craft and design. So watching a lot of ballet, you can kind of learn that, but just, I don't know. I have to give it all to him. Because I was never trained in choreography. I didn't take the courses in college. I was a psychology major, and I just get ideas and just start getting in the studio and playing. And then I guess when I was asked to teach the course, it kind of makes you have to go, I need to put some words to these actions that I'm doing, and still learning. I mean, I'm still always in the process of learning. I mean, because I think there's so many ways to communicate and create, and the choreographic process is so different for each person. I'm really inspired by music. That's my first motivator in what I do. And usually God gives me a picture of, I kind of go backwards. I go from the performance to the actual steps. I kind of see I hear the music, I see the lighting, I see the idea, the concept, the costumes, and the last thing that comes to me are steps.
That is a little backwards.
It's a little backwards. And then steps will start coming, and it just happens. And there's been some flops in my choreographic career that just kind of but ultimately I want the dancers to be involved in the process too, so it's a gift that I give to them as well. So as long as they're enjoying the process and the product, then then God gets all the glory for that, because that what's bringing me great joy is to see them grow as an artist. First, I want them to grow as an artist, challenge them technically or projection or whatever that may be. Think about who my cast is and what do I want to highlight and show who they are so that they can grow, they can present, honor God with what they have to offer as well, because it's a collaboration between me and the dancers. So
That's good.
Yeah.
And then I think sometimes we forget about the collaboration between the dancer and the audience when we get to that next place, or if it's in a different environment with the congregation or wherever that presenting occurs. So I don't know if this will put you on the spot, but just maybe a couple of your favorite works that you've created, because you've created a lot of choreography through the years, but what have either been a part of the personal stories or just a part of your heart that comes out from a biblical context, or because you've got a whole array of fun, whimsical works to just profound, this is the scripture, I am now watching a Bible story, but not in literal gestures so much. So anyway, well, what do you feel are some of the favorites? And even why?
That's a good one. I love telling stories, and I also love doing abstract. So but I find that I kind of lean more towards storytelling, even though it may not be this real obvious story that I'm telling. I did do one ballet called Awaiting, which it was based on the concept of the 10 virgins, and took a little contemporary twist to that. Instead of having lanterns, we used jackets. Just thought it would be more relevant to this time of being ready for the bridegroom. And so telling that story in more of an abstract way, I love doing. I guess one of my biggest endeavors, there's been a couple. I did one actually collaborating with your husband, a piece about the Holocaust, which was a little bit deeper and darker, but I love that collaborative process with a musician, a composer, and the dancers. That was always wonderful. And we had speaking parts and we had singing, and there was a lot of things going on with that. But more recently, I did Into the Light, which is based on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which was a collaboration with another choreographer, graduate of Bellhaven, Rachel Yeager. That was a lot of fun. And we had a composer in that as well. And that was always eventful, especially being a long distance composer. But I loved telling the story. I love to do pieces that make people smile. I really don't, there's some pieces that I do want to be very intentional what I'm communicating, and that the audience comes away with a very clear idea of what was just presented, danced. And there's other times I just want them to take away whatever they want to take away and enjoy, and hopefully a smile. So I've done things to Ella Fitzgerald, nonsensical vignettes, and how can you not smile? Ella. And so that was fun, and more of a jazz feel. I did a 1940s piece with a lot of jitterbugs and partnering, and Benny Goodman and all these great jazz players of the 40s, and so that was fun. You challenged me to do a piece with electronic type music. That was a challenge, and I ended up really enjoying that process. And that was more of an abstract, pretty intense, just more contemporary ballet, kind of out of my comfort zone. So there's a lot, there's a variety. And of course I love doing tutu ballets. It's been a while. It's almost time to do a tutu ballet again. I love doing, very romantic style, just beauty of watching dancers on stage in point shoes and tutus, and so there's just whatever I feel the Lord's kind of leading me to do, or the need of the dancers. Sometimes being in a collegiate setting, you kind of what would these dancers need to be challenged as artists, because they're trying to get this education, and we're trying to give them the tools and to nurture them as they go out wherever they take their dance. So
that's a great point to even speak about. Just sometimes we are conditioned as a Christian that it has to be, if it's in our creative writing or in our painting, this is artists that this huge wall right back about her hair is you can't miss the cross. And so when you're dancing, well, where's the cross in the dance? And That's of course one way and an expression, but you're validating that there's a lot of ways and a lot of styles that God can be found in. Can you either talk about that or just, I mean, you're just saying like however the Lord's leading you. And so you just really feel like God leads you into these times. You feel like you've even had to break that Christian mold because that wasn't necessarily the mold you grew up in, or just your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it wasn't the mold I was brought up in. So I didn't come from that background. So maybe that's why I approach it from the outside a little bit differently into the choreographic process. So I, as a Christian artist, I feel like even though there's not this depiction of Jesus on the cross, that everything I do is honoring to him regardless. And that's my intention. That's my heart behind my work, and to keep it holy and pure as well. And to not do anything that could be misinterpreted, you know, and to bring that joy of dance and to see the human body moving in space and what God's creation can do on stage is just phenomenal and beautiful to watch, and to be able to express that and to show that is what brings me, you know, a lot of joy. You know, there's a lot of struggles, there's a lot of sweat, maybe a little blood under the point shoes, you know, maybe some tears, but you know, to see, you know, some of the dancers, you know, just encountering and dealing and pushing through some of the struggles, whether it be stamina, a technical feat that they're trying to accomplish and gain, is, you know, there's growth in them too. And that's, you know, it's always good to read. We get these little evaluations of how they've grown through the process, you know, and to see how the Lord, you know, when the days were tough, you know, we all came together and said, we're here. Let's do what the Lord has called us to do.
That's so good. As you mentioned the stage, I just want to go ahead and move into some of the places where we've been. And sometimes the stage wasn't so optimal.
There's some interesting spaces, yes.
And so from your experience, maybe you can just share, I mean, where we've traveled, you know, in the world outside the United States, and then some of those venues. What are some of the just memories or highlights?
Oh my goodness. Oh, we had beautiful times, lots of beautiful times. So we went several times to South Korea together. One of the most memorable moments for me was when we were doing the dance film, and it was a piece that you had choreographed, concentric circles. And it was like the culminating aspect of this film that we were doing. Correct me if I'm getting this wrong.
That's right.
And we asked our dancers to perform it on the beach. And it was at the South Sea. I don't know my geography. South Sea, and the tide was coming in, and they're wearing white costumes. And okay, this is not your typical stage, but what an incredible stage that we had for them to perform. The lighting was just perfect. We didn't have to worry about technology, except our music didn't.
But the sun was setting.
The sun was setting. The dancers kept going just without music. And the tide was coming up. I mean, I was just weeping. It was so glorious to see that. I mean, and the dancers were just like, wow, what just happened? And the film crew,
which weren't really Christians. No. It was a university where it was a secular university that wanted to partner with.
And it was just film crew, and they were just like, wow, this was incredible. So, you know, those little seeds that were planted right there, you know, you know, only God could have done that. That was so memorable. That's just so vivid in my mind still today. Just other, you know, going into schools, and some of the, we've gone into orphanages and done children's shows. That was a beautiful opportunity. We were in South Korea, very close to the North Korean border, and did some, just loved on those children. There's just, gosh. And then we had the opportunity to be on these ginormous concert stages that
Science fiction stages.
it was like a football field.
Yeah.
It just kept going.
Huge.
And I mean,
Yeah.
the technology, I was just like,
Yeah.
I would like to be a fly on the wall and
Yeah.
learn from these lighting designers.
Yeah.
It was just, just God had so much favor and just allowed us to do amazing things. I remember being in Europe and having our dancers try to dance on gravel in a playground,
Yeah.
but we danced in a piazza.
Yeah.
And the beautiful testimonies of just how people were touched by, just us being willing to go out and just go, here's my gift. This is a universal language. I can't speak Italian, I can't speak Korean, but I can dance and let God do the rest.
Yeah.
So that was just incredible. I mean, so many beautiful memories that, were just ingrained in my mind. I mean, there's probably so many more.
Yeah.
So many more.
I remember the one at the hospital for the terminally ill.
Oh my gosh, yes. How could I forget that one? And that made me tear up.
I know.
That was so beautiful.
Incredible to be, because those patients they knew weren't coming out, weren't leaving the hospital unless it was going to be the interaction, a miraculous intervention of God. But being in that environment and having our dancers be able to share and knowing that we would be the only and last art-filled experience that they would ever have. So, so incredible. And then also in some of the environments like the schools where we had some good-looking young young men that were with us that were just like rock stars, and these young girls that would just like scream their heads off. So crazy.
It was crazy.
Yeah,
It was
so
crazy.
a lot of
things, a lot of wonderful things that just happened. Yeah, beautiful things. Yeah.
So that's, I mean, obviously some experiences that we've been able to share and pass on to our students, and these students that both were able to have these as memories themselves, but some of the relationships, I'd love for you to share about that. Just in particular, maybe the ones that we've had overseas, or just friendships, relationships that you've built and established through the years because of faith or because of dance. And we're at the similar age where now some of those relationships are coming back around. And maybe just speak to, what have you seen God do in your relationships involved in your life because of being a dancer?
Right. Well, as a teacher, you always have this kind of level change, and as your incoming freshmen come in, they're like, I don't know if I can and talk to this teacher, but then they realize that you're human too. And to see that, I have flaws. I know, hard to believe. But and to see that they're like, oh, she's real. She sees, and be able to come back, several years after they've graduated and have these interactions with them, and no longer as teacher student, but friend to friend, and still know that I'm always available. You're always available. We're an email away, a phone call away. Has been really beautiful to see. And actually it's just at a different level now. Now we can be more like colleagues, they still won't get rid of Miss Morton. They're just like, I can't do it. And it's just really beautiful to know that they trust me enough to come back into my life, because I never want to push myself on them, but I'm available. Just reach out to me, and whatever you need. If I can't help you, I find somebody that can. And so that's been, beautiful, especially within, I guess, when you're in a higher education and you're with these students day in and day out for 4 years, you really get to know them. And that's so beautiful. And it's, they make amazing friendships that last forever, and since we're a relatively small, right? I mean, we know each other by name. Our students, I think that's even more significant because I came from a very large university where I was just an ID number. Yeah. I mean, none of my professors knew my name because I was in a class of 500 students, I was in a big university. So that intimacy that they get within the university setting is really special for our students and probably many other university programs as well. The tight knit group that you get because that's all you do, you dance all day long. Yeah. So it's wonderful to be able to have, hey, Miss Morton, whatever they need, and be able to reach out and help and mentor. I mean, that's just a passion of mine, is to continue to mentor. I mean, it doesn't stop once you get the degree. Right. We're still here. I want to continue to, build you up, encourage you, whatever you need. As an artist, a teacher, or mom, or whatever.
Mom thing can be big.
Yeah, the mom thing is real big. Whatever you need. As a working mom, to be able to pour into their lives beyond their time that I've actually had them as a student.
And you're seeing some of your students like back at Houston Ballet also, right? Or just other places, not just the collegiate level, but some ones that you've taught in younger years.
Yeah, a student of mine that I've known for 25 years. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. I mean, the dance world's pretty small anyway. Right. So you're going to continue to see these people over and over again, but to see how the relationship has changed and shifted, and I think even better. Yeah. Because we matured, we experienced life a little bit more. So that's always been really special to reconnect, because we know that these relationships are important in our life. And that's God's kingdom is built on relationships. So we need each other. Yeah, absolutely. Him up there and then everybody else. Yeah, we need her.
Yeah. And that's a little contrary sometimes, in particular in the dance world, because you're your own entity and you've got to strive to reach your optimal excellence, can get into that perfectionistic aspect. So I'd love to talk about two areas, because you've done your own studies and research and just centered around the health and mental health and emotional health of dancers. That I'd love to talk about. And then just following just how you see the arts being used by God to just redeem culture, or the ways God's moving out there in the world today, because there's a lot of different arts, but how can we as Christians bring hope or healing to the world through the art of dance? Because I know you're so passionate about dance as a tool to communicate. So let's start with the first one, just the mental, emotional health. Just how are you seeing that there's need for just equipping dancers with those tools?
Yeah. Oh, there's a definite need. I feel like, especially when you want to put God first in your life, how the enemy can come in so strongly into our mind, because that's the first place he's going to attack. We know that battlefield exists in our mind. A Christian artist or an artist that doesn't know the Lord, the struggles are the same, but we just have a friend by our side that's going to help us combat some of these things. And just some of the things that I've done in the past with students is, we're all familiar with negative thoughts, and then stopping those negative thoughts is to really think about, okay, we've got to use God's word to really combat, because that's the ultimate word. He's going to speak life, he's going to speak truth into us, and to have them really hear what the Lord says about them, and for myself as well. Right. I mean, I have to do that on a daily basis too. Yeah. To hear what he thinks about me, how he sees me, and to really help them understand what those thoughts, where they're stemming from. Yeah. And so countering those ideas, I've done other things where, just reading Psalm 139, which is such a beautiful psalm, and and rewrite that in their own words, where it really speaks to them, and kind of how does dance relate to that? Talk about your turnout, right? What does God think about your turnout? It's kind of silly, but
he cares about everything.
He cares about everything. What you think of your lack of turnout, or my extension, or whatever it is.
My nose,
my color, my eyes, all those things. Bring it all to him, and then use that to just kind of saturate, if you will, just absorb that into your body, of how he speaks truth over you. And Yeah, it's a constant battle. I mean, it's a daily thing, but knowing that, you know, he's got it.
Yeah.
You got to give it to him. Allow him to go to those wounded places or those voices that you still hear, and allow him to speak louder than those voices. And so using that is always really important, and just still reading more and more of, you know, how can I as a teacher make sure that I'm not saying something that might trigger something. You know, being very sensitive to my students wherever I am. You know, trying to be very careful with my choice of words. I'm not always successful, but trying to be sensitive to that and see how can I build them up, because it's easy to tell them what they're not doing.
Right. Oh yeah. Right.
And instead of saying what they are doing. And you know, and sometimes you do have to hear that. I mean, you've got to hear that corrective criticism, but you know, knowing that there's so much more that's really good. There's other things that we want to continue to work on in anything we do in life, but to know what are we doing well. So I always encourage them to find, you know, what are the 3 great things you're doing in class today. Not like I didn't do this. I mean, because we can do that. And you know, and see if they really hear. Do you know, do your students really hear you when you give them praise? I've even asked them, I said, did y'all hear that? And they're like, no, we were just thinking about how we fell out of that pirouette. You know,
That goes back to that learning to listen, right?
Learning to listen
here. That's good. And then the whole other question just related to just how the arts can be used and how dance can be used to offer hope or inspiration or truth or joy.
I mean, like I said, it's a language that nobody really needs to know. I understand really per se, unless they're trying to analyze what the dancer's doing on stage, but to see the emotion that's involved in dance, the passion that can be involved in dance, I think is instrumental, because so many cultures have dance in their culture, and it's a part of who the people are. And if we can redeem some of that dance, because some of that dance has not always been the best representation of God, allowing that to bring, you know, get those Christian artists in there to go, this is pure, this is good, this is admirable, this is honoring, and to use dance just to, you know, speak to people, you know, if they're open to receive it in that capacity as a healing tool or whatever they're looking for, because there's other approaches. But to understand that dance is such a beautiful tool and can be used, you know, like you said, put a smile on the face, put a smile on the heart, you know, give them those little warm fuzzies, or make them think, give them something to think, you know. I think a lot of people like to see things and be challenged sometimes, and sometimes not. They don't. But to really understand that, you know, and it's interesting sometimes when you're dancing something. I don't know if this has happened with you, but an audience member or somebody in the church comes up and shares something with you that just spoke to them that was totally different than what you were feeling or anything, but what God was speaking to them through it, you know, is always, it's like, wow, you know, it's good. That's really good. I didn't know that that's, you know, that's great. Receive it, you know. So it's always been fun to watch, you know, just how he moves in that way.
Well, it doesn't get tied up in the verbal language with particular movements, and I love that. Like this gesture can mean so many different things. Give it to me now, or
I'll give it to you.
Or I don't know if you have to take it.
Right.
You know, so just that's the magic of dance and movement and gesture, and then interpretation, and it's like the word, right? You read the word of God one day, you can read the same word the next day or a year or 10 years,
something different. He speaks to you in a totally different way.
Amazing. That inspiration.
It never gets old. It just new life every time you read it. You just think, oh, I'm going to read this scripture again. But then he just speaks to you in a totally different way.
And dance is like that too, which I just think, I don't know. I've
You
been
want
at
it
it
to
for, I
be,
know.
because you're rehearsing so much.
Yeah.
So you want to bring new life
Yeah.
to it every time.
Yeah.
You know, that's what brings the joy. I mean, it's hard when you're a dancer to rehearse. You know, but then at the same time, some of these people are seeing it for the first time.
Yeah.
So what it's about giving to them. It's not about what you're doing. So
Yeah, there's a whole life lesson in that, just in living life and going through the motions, showing up to class, going through the steps, showing up to rehearsal, going through the piece. But really it's you're present.
Yeah.
In every moment of interaction, you're present in your connection with God, you're present in the technical pursuit or artistic endeavors. There's something about that practicing the presence of God in everything.
That's good.
Yeah.
I have to remember that when my dancers are doing a demi plie again.
Yeah.
You know, what new life can I bring into this demi plie? What can I learn today? Lord, what can you say to me about this demi plie? I mean, you know, it can be as simple as that. Yeah. You know, and he'll speak to you in your demi plie. You know, you may hear your teacher going, "Get your knees over your toes," but he's going, "That's beautiful. That's beautiful."
Yeah. That's so good. Well, just in closing, just if you had something to share, or you know, a nugget of truth. I mean, I know that nurture part of you articulates over and over again, and just worth and value. But just what do you feel like the world needs to hear today, or dancers out there today need to know and understand?
Definitely their worth and value, but also realizing and understanding how, like I said before, how to work with the body that they have, not to aspire to this wannabe turnout, whatever that may be or whatever it is, but to know that God has gifted them with their uniqueness in their body, in their minds, in their hearts, in their spirits, and to embrace that and to know that well, because he's so pleased with what they have to offer, not what the world has to offer, but what God has to offer through them. I mean, because he says he uses the foolish things, and sometimes we do foolish things, but he still uses us in a mighty way, and you're just like, whoa, how did that happen? You know, and to understand that, never stop learning. I mean, if you're going to continue to train and to continue to dance, keep this vessel training, keep this vessel fueled properly, keep this vessel rested properly, give this vessel time to recover, keep feeding it what it needs to be fed nutritionally, but also spiritually, because that's so important, because it's easy to get into the physical aspect of what we're doing and forget other areas of our life, and to keep that all in balance, keep that all in check. There's so many people out there that have so many things available to help you with all those areas. If there's an area of struggle, you know, to reach out and but just to continue to keep learning, especially as a teacher. I mean, it's easy to go, I know the content, but I need to keep studying the pedagogy. I need to keep studying the how, because dance is changing. The dancers' bodies are changing, you know, and we need to stay in tune and be prepared as dance educators to pour into that next generation and to love them first and foremost as a human.
Well, you've modeled that beautifully with all of your continued education, and what amazing contributions you're continuing to make, both in this realm of academia, but where people are bringing you in as a guest, and just that championing the other educators and that mentorship, that it's in such a beautiful way.
It's never late to go back to school.
No.
Went back to school at 50 for a master's. You can do it. Not a master's maybe, but but to continue just, I love learning, you know, learning more about who he is, but also how I can pour out into my students just the practical things of dance, you know, because that's so important, because I feel like those understanding of those practical things can speak into their hearts, into spiritual things, because that credibility that you're gaining and that respect that you're gaining, and then I feel like they become more open and transparent that you can speak into other areas of their life. And that's always been beautiful to be able to do and to be trusted
Yeah.
with that, with a student, because that's, you know, that's pretty vulnerable. To know that they trust you enough. Yeah.
Well, your students trust you and
Oh,
they
thank
love
you.
you and your
I
colleagues.
love them. They may not think it,
Yeah,
but I do.
I
I
know
love
you
them.
do. And your colleagues too. You're definitely well respected in the industry and well respected in the
Oh,
Christian
thank
circle.
you very much.
And I respect you greatly and love you dearly. And I'm so
Love
thankful
you too.
for what we've been able to experience. And there's so much more yet to come.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I hope so.
Me too.
Yeah, in the future. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a
Absolutely.
treat. Yeah, special treat.
Absolutely. Thank you, my friend. I love you.
Love you.
All right, I'll cut this last bit.
That was great.
Well, you're amazing, Mama.